Greetings, magical souls. I've come on today to just share a little bit about what I have uncovered in the past couple of days, going through these really, really, really intense energies. What really dropped in for me is I had a series of events that happened, as well as sort of being very up and down in these energies. There were a few things which I'll get into, but what really this video is about is the importance of returning to ritual, ceremony, rites of passage, things that we seem to have forgotten in the rush of today's modern world. What recently happened is that I sort of had a bit of an epiphany. Most of you know that I have been having these sort of technical issues on YouTube of late. And anyway, they continue. But really, what happened the other day is that I was sort of analyzing my sort of statistics, video statistics, and that. And when I was looking at certain things, like the numbers just weren't adding up. And then when I tried to delve deeper into it, I realized that a lot of even the numbers on YouTube are an illusion. And it sent me down a little bit of a spiral because it was, I guess I didn't realize, I mean, I knew some of it was, but what really hit home for me was that I've got a lot of subscribers who probably are just haven't unsubscribed to my channel and maybe moved on, which is all good. But the sort of the idea that I have that amount of people sort of here really wanting to build community with me was a little bit of an eye opener when I realized that, even half of my subscribers could even be bots. And I mean, that's the same on any social media platform. But I guess because of the engagement that I get on this channel, it hadn't really sunk in for me just how misleading the numbers are, even the amount of views that you get. And the other thing that I really didn't realize, but I should have because it's happened to me before, is that my subscribers don't necessarily get notified when I've got a new video out or a new offering out. YouTube, the algorithm decides which videos it feels are needing to actually be pushed to your subscribers or even further out than. And I know that this has happened to me before because there are channels that I follow, and if I go and click on my subscriptions, the videos are sometimes not there, but if I actually go into that person's channel, they've got a new video. So there is so much illusion even around subscribe to my channel so that you can get, you get to see all the content that I create. That is a bigger illusion than what I thought. And that was probably the main thing. And I don't think I really realized it until I then reflected back on what had been going on. But the reason why this is important is because it brought up issues of my self-worth again. And what it really did is I was sitting there going, well, then what's even the point of having this channel if it's an illusion? Because as a lot of you know who have followed me for a while, I really, really like to just show up here and be authentic. I only create when I feel like I have something that might help somebody. I share from experience. I don't really censor myself. So authenticity is really key for me in this world of exactly what I'm just talking about, where things are such an illusion. Why it was important for me is that I just thought, well, really, then, how many people am I helping and whatever? And I kind of went into a spiral and I thought, well, I'm not sure whether I'm really adding any value. But tied to that was my self-worth, which at the time I didn't really realize. I went into meditation after feeling in a really crappy, low place. And I had the dragons come in and they were like, well, why don't you just create? Because just create even if nobody's watching. And then I thought, Okay, well, yeah, that's really important. I mean, I should just be creating even if nobody's watching. But what then happened with that is that they said to me, "Why are you so concerned with the numbers? What do the numbers mean to you?" And as I was sitting there in meditation, it was like my initial answer just really came out, and well, because then that's how many people find my content interesting. And that means that I can continue to create because somebody out there is finding my stuff valuable. And that then led into further introspection and whatever. And all of a sudden, there was this low self worth thing in my face again that I have spent so long and so doing so much work working on, that for it to all of a sudden be there again was like a real shock and a real surprise, because it was like, but I've worked through this. Why is it still there? So, without going into too much detail, there was a lot more that I unpacked, but that's really just to give you the gist of it, how I arrived at this. So once again, sort of the illusion, and I guess we can call it sort of the darkness and the effery that I like to call a lot of the false matrix and stuff, a lot of the illusion in that darkness, and in having that epiphany and then having that real low spiral. I really got a gift again, because it allowed me, going into that space, allowed me to have something reflected back to me as to, well, why does it matter that I have, if I have one person that I'm adding value to, because that's always been my philosophy, any content that I put out, even if it just helps one person. So why am I so fixated on my thousand and whatever subscribers? Because what does it matter if half of them are bots? What does it matter if 90% of them are bots? And then the deeper insights from that came in further during a journaling session were that on so many channels, and sometimes it's not even just on YouTube, there are people that start to sort of fight and argue in the comments. And what was really brought into my awareness was, look how people engage with you. So what does it matter that you only have 5 comments or 1 comment or 10 comments? Or so what if your videos are only getting 20 views? The engagement in there is real. People are connecting, people are sharing. That is the heart of this. So the numbers actually don't matter, but the numbers were something that actually allowed me to bring this back home, for me to really examine why this was such an issue for me when I stumbled across this illusion. But what it did allow is for me to just, for a moment, just move out of that very woe is me victim space. I was having a real like little pity party for myself that carried on for far too long. But it just allowed me to move out of that space and realize really that that's just how it is. It is what it is. That is part of the system that we live in. And it's not really that I'm being targeted. But what led to my own insight further from that, how much engagement, there was the engagement part, like the depth of engagement, the fact that the same people are commenting. I know a lot of these people, they're my clients, or they've attended live events with me, or I'm connected to them in other ways, or they'll reach out to me in various ways, through email, through comments, through whatever it is. And even though I've never met these people like physically in real life, I know these people. I know they're not bots. They are real. That engagement is real. And then what happened from there is that I have a real channel, and that's why my views are low. And that's why my content doesn't go viral, because it's not the distraction stuff that is all the hooky stuff and the clickbaity stuff and whatever. Because obviously that's what gets the sort of, I'd say, the majority of humanity, who are fully enmeshed in that distraction because they don't want to look at their shadow, and that those that are not really awake to the work that they need to do, and that kind of thing, or they've made a choice not to. So that distraction is where, the advertisers get their revenue from, where YouTube gets its revenue from, or Instagram, or whichever platform that you're on. So the fact that my stuff doesn't go viral and that stays in that pretty small space actually really tells me that the stuff that I'm putting out is valuable, because it's not for everybody. It's not for the masses. And I've always said that I want to attract people to this channel that are of the same vibration or frequency that I'm working in. The ones that want to do the work, the ones that want to reflect, the ones that want to be the change that we wish to see in the world. But then what happened is I had a conversation with a friend. We got on the phone, we chatted for 2 hours, and as I was talking to her, these very soft, gentle words were coming in, and it was saying to me, like, this is why X, Y, and Z are happening. This is why this is important. Why don't you do that for yourself? And it was so profound that I had to actually, I mean, because I was on WhatsApp with her, but I quickly got out my laptop and I quickly made some notes about this stuff that had just dropped in. And it was like the words were still coming out my mouth to her, but I was busy listening to this other voice that was, and it was like, whoa, like this is wow. As the words were coming out of my mouth, I was like giving myself my own messages, but then I had this other bigger part of me also come in. It was like this three-way conversation going on just with me. It was like there was four of us in the conversation, not two. And it was pretty surreal actually, but it was so interesting. And so afterwards I went back to look at it and then just sit in silence and reflect on it. And what really came up was the ceremony, the ritual, the rites of passage. And essentially, what this is that if I'm going to create an animal container, I go into like a ceremony. There are candles lit. I've set up a crystal grid. I've set my intentions. This is what I do. I press record, but all of this stuff is going on in the background. There's this real ceremony going on, this physical ceremony to almost bring in and anchor in this energetic work that I'm about to do, or to anchor in or bring through into this physical reality, this offering that I'm about to create. And and then it was also, I do that if I'm in a healing session with a client. I have candles lit. We're setting intentions. There's mantras, or there's mudras, or there's something going on, whether it's a grid or a this or that, or we're writing stuff and we're burning it, or whatever it is. There's some kind of ceremony, ritual. And even when I'm working with the dragons, when I spent the last year working with the dragons, every time I sat with them and worked, the altar cloth would come out. I mean, I've still got my dragon altar set up here. It's set up permanently in my cabin. But there would be different crystals. The bowl of salt would come out with a bowl of water. I would speak. I would walk around sprinkling the salt and the water just before I worked with the dragons. And and so there is this ritual and the ceremony, and I love it because even though sometimes I might not always have the clothing on, I've got the jewelry on, or I've got a headpiece on, or I've got my wand out, or I've got something. There's something physical that I'm doing, and this is what's so important. So the epiphany that dropped in from this is that we do all of the ceremony. Well, I do all of the ceremony and whatever for cutting cords with relationships that I've let go of, creating things, creating containers, working with my clients, whatever it is. So why don't I do those ceremonies for the old parts of me that I let go of, the old parts of me that are basically dead? The parts of me that I'm letting go of, the parts of me that I'm laying to rest. And when I say dead, I don't mean that in a bad way, but they are old parts of ourselves. And this is exactly what really, how this whole thing with my self-worth issues came back, because it was like I wasn't even aware that that was still a thing in my field, because I've done so much work on disengaging from people who feed that self-worth or things like that. And so there were people that I had to disengage with and cut cords from. There was all this stuff, but I hadn't actually had the ceremony for me. So in the same way that we have a funeral when a loved one or a friend or whatever it is moves on, in the same way we even do the same thing for our animals when they exit the physical body. We hold ceremony for them. We go to a funeral, we pay our respects, we honor them, we say our last words. They're like the last rites. And it was, so why don't I do that for the old parts of me? And is that why the old parts of me are still hanging around like ghosts? They might not be as noticeable, and they might not be sort of controlling me as much as they were, but they're still there. And that led me to think about, like in the old days, I mean, exactly what I'm describing, how I work with my dragons. I'm walking around, I'm sprinkling salt, I'm doing the whole shebang. But think about how the witches were always in circles in the forest and throwing herbs out, and they lived their life as like a ritual and a ceremony. And there was the moon work and the this work and the that work, and if they were banishing things, but even our ancestors knew there were rites of passage. If you think about just going from a child into an adolescent into an adult, there were certain rites of passage. There were rituals when they went from sort of one part of their life into the next. They would even bury tools. They would do all these things. We've lost total touch with this actual physical part of what we're doing. And that's why the ceremony and this ritual and this practice is so important, because it allows us to embody and actually speak out, and for the body to go through something physical so that it knows that part of us is left, as well as the energy stuff happening. So it's all very good and well cutting cords and doing all this energy work, but we keep talking about the fact that we can't live out there. So what are we doing to embody the practice, and what are we doing to connect with Gaia? Because when people are doing these things, they're burying stuff, or they're burning stuff, or they're dancing and singing, but they're using their physical vessel. They are doing something. You don't, most of the time when somebody passes, you're going to a funeral or a wake, or, and in the old days, they would put the body on the wooden raft and then push it out to sea, and everybody would watch it burn. So we've lost touch with these rituals, and these rituals connect us not only to our body, but to the planet, to nature. This is so, so important. And then what really landed for me is, this may be another reason why some of us feel so heavy, why some of us actually feel these things returning again and again and again, because we're literally dragging around ghosts of ourselves, old parts of ourselves, instead of laying them to rest. Something really, really profound happened the following morning. This video pops up on my feed, and it's from a Norwegian woman who, I don't know her. It looks like she is living somewhere in Norway off grid, and very much connected back into those old Norse ways of doing things, like the Viking ways of doing things. Like, it looks like she's disconnected from the false world. And her video was, I can't remember exactly what it was called, but she said, "This is why you're tired." And she had this little 3-minute video on more the physical aspect. And she said the reason why people are feeling physically tired is because they're literally dragging old bodies, old parts of themselves around, because we don't do ritual and ceremony anymore. We don't have funerals for the dead parts of ourselves. We've lost this rite of passage and these ceremonies, these rituals that one used to do. And so there was such a synchronicity to her because her video, and I've linked it in the description box because I think it's very useful to just go and listen to what she says and take what resonates, even with what I'm saying, is always take what resonates. But it was such a, she was bringing more the physical side of it, so the physical heaviness of the body and dragging around these old parts of ourselves, as mine was more this consciousness or this program, me dragging around these ghosts of programs, but still parts, the same thing, the same message. We were given the same message. We just sort of looking at it from slightly different perspectives, and both of those are valid. And in fact, there's probably a million more perspectives. But I've been speaking a lot about how the synchronicities are off the charts at the moment. When I get that the next morning, that was just like a, I have to share this. This feels like something that is, she's sharing that part. Then I see her video, and just after what I've gone through in the past 48 hours, and I just thought this was really, really worth sharing. So the bottom line with this is that these perspectives both show how much we still ignore the self. It's the ceremony, the rites of passage, the rituals that help us to connect to ourself, to our body, to Gaia. And it's all feeding back, connecting ourself to Gaia, connecting ourself to our body, connecting Gaia to our body, connecting Gaia to ourself. It's, this is the disconnection we're feeling. We keep talking about why humanity's like it is. It's, and because we're disconnected from self, we're disconnected from nature. These rituals are the bridge. This is the ceremony that keeps us touching the earth, feeling the earth, being at one with the earth, Gaia taking on stuff for us that we can let go of, us releasing the parts of us that we no longer need to carry. This is it. This is the connection. The ceremony is the bridge. The rituals are the bridge. The rites of passage are the bridge. And it happens through our body. I keep saying our body is the bridge between the higher realms and this realm that we live in. And the other thing is that really, if you think about our modern world, we're not taught at school how to honor ourselves, how to honor the old parts of ourselves. A lot of us stay attached to things. I mean, we even keep old clothing in our wardrobes. We even keep these mementos and we go, oh, they're sentimental. What if even those things are keeping you tied to those old versions of yourself where you keep thinking, oh, the old days, the old days. But that's not you anymore. The old days are not me anymore. We're changing. I'm not the person I was yesterday, 4 weeks ago, 6 months ago. So in these rituals, you can even take some of these things, like if you have a memento of something. I mean, obviously, if it's, it needs to be something that you might be hanging on to, that you keep going back to. And if it's making, I would say, if it's making you feel sad and like you're missing that old part of yourself and you wish you could go back there because those were happier days and whatever, I would examine why you feel that way, because maybe it's time to go and bury that object. And you will know whether you want to bury it or keep it, or you bury the attachment or the memories of that object, so you can actually clear that object and allow it to, for you to start looking at it as the being that you are now, but not keeping you tethered to the past. And the reason why I say this is important, if you have some object or something that you look back on and it makes you really nostalgic and like you want to go back to that time, our memories and our attachment to those old things, those old memories, those old, those days in gone by, like past times in this lifetime, are what keep this false construct alive. We have to let go of the old. We cannot live in the old and we cannot live in the new. We have got to become more present. And that's the beauty of these rituals, is you are fully present. You are sitting with exactly what it is that you want to do. I mean, that's what happens when I'm creating containers or working with my clients and whatever. Nothing else exists in that moment. It's just whatever I'm doing. And that is the eternal now. So if you've got anything that you're looking at, whether it's in your wardrobe, it's a memento, it's sentimental, let's really examine what that sentimentality is. And you need to ask yourself whether that's doing you any good, or is it keeping you tethered to an old version of yourself? And remember, if it's keeping you tethered to an old version of yourself, that might be an old timeline. And that might be why you're feeling stuck. And you don't even know, well, some of us don't realize we're stuck until we realize we're stuck. But sometimes we wonder why we're stuck, yet we've got all these things around us that are literally keeping us tethered to old versions of ourselves. And then we complain that we're stuck. I mean, this is so simple when you think about it, but yet so profound. And I love these things that come in because they are simple. There's no layer upon layer upon layer of smoke and mirrors and, oh, look here and look there and distraction. And it's so simple and it's so crystal clear. And that's always how I know that things are true for me, when they seem so profound and so like my mind is blown, but when I really sit and look at them, they're so crystal clear and they are so simple. There's none of the layers that go on in this false construct which are deliberately there to bamboozle us and to keep us distracted. And just think about it, we're not taught this at school. We're not taught how to go within, how to connect. Unless you're living as a sort of a First Nations tribe and you are still living connected to the land, none of us do these rituals and things anymore. And I'm not talking about the religious rituals. I'm talking about the rituals that connected us to the earth, that reminded us that we were a part of the earth and that we're a part of all that is. We're a part of our body. We're all parts making up the whole. And these things are so important because we're not taught to connect with ourselves at school. We're not taught how to meditate, how to be still, how to go in and see why is it that we are feeling pain. No, we're taught to look out here and then go and see that doctor and get that done and have that surgery and take that pill. And, it's all the distraction from self again. And these are the old ways. These are the old ancient ways that I believe we're starting to remember as we walk this path. And the thing about this is that also, even in the spiritual community, there's so much talk about clearing your channel and raising your vibration and cutting the cords, and that's all. It's all 100% valid. But without the embodiment and without the connection to our beautiful Mother Gaia, that stuff does tend to keep us living out here in this spiritual place, in this etheric place. And then, as I've said before, then we don't need to be here in these physical bodies. We just don't. And so I've thought this was really, really important because I think that it's not doing just the ceremony, it's also doing the cutting the cords and doing the energy work. It's not just doing the energy work and working in the body, it's also doing the limiting belief work, which is more about your mental body. Then it's about mastering your emotions and whatever, which is the emotional body. It's all of it. But I believe this is the missing piece for the body. This is the embodiment again. So ceremony is not just spiritual, it's embodiment. It is the bridge that I believe allow us, well, some of us, if we have those recurring loops where we've really done a lot of work, or we've got things in our past that we think are sentimental that might be holding us back, this might be what finally sets us free. Finally sets us free. And there may be more work to do. And that's why I say always take what resonates. You'll know. But this thing for me, when it came back, was like, I know in every fiber of my being that this is not something that should be coming back. So that is why I sat with it and thought, why is this still here? Because I know how much work I have done on that issue. And it was like, it wasn't even in my awareness, because I know of the things that I've still got to work on. And yes, some of them sometimes pop in and I go, oh, I didn't realize that was there. but this was something that I have spent more than a decade working on. And when you spend that much time working on it, granted, some things have to unfold in layers so that you can deal with it, but I have had those layers unfold. I have done the energetic work, the emotional work, the mental work, the cutting ties with people, I have done, you name it, I've done it. But I haven't done the ceremony for myself to say goodbye to that old part of myself with the low self-worth that thought it was keeping that will, and that probably was keeping me safe at one stage, keeping me hidden, keeping me small. It would have served a purpose, but I no longer need that part of myself. I no longer need the part of me that plays small. So I encourage you to tune into this and see if it resonates. And you'll know if it does, because as I've been talking, if you've been getting anything like full body goosebumps or anything like that, then there's something in this for you to explore. If you feel like it's not for you, that's also good. And it can be something simple. You can start with something really simple, lighting a candle, sitting down, writing out something or burning it. Simple, simple rituals. Really, really simple. Walking out in nature. Imagine that you're releasing whatever it is down through your feet into Gaia, asking your ancestors to help you. Because remember, a lot of the stuff that we're releasing, some of it's coming from further back than this lifetime. Whatever it is. But I did get a beautiful ceremony from the dragons, and I've chosen to share it. I've adapted it so that it's not just tied to one thing, which I got just to work on my thing, but I've adapted it so that you can use it on anything. And I've created a little PDF on that for anybody that might be new to this work or just really doesn't know where to start or has sat with a candle and burnt a letter and done this very simple things like I've said them for them to do, and they just go, well, that didn't really get me into it, or maybe I've still got something stuck. I've created a little PDF with 6 steps that you can work through, and then please adapt as you'd like to. So if it calls to you, that little PDF is sitting on my website for free download, and the link will be in the description box for that, as well as to Freya's video. And I hope that that's really helpful. I did the ceremony actually just this morning, and I feel lighter. It took me about 10 minutes. It didn't take very long. And I sat down and I did it, and I just, it was really, really, really helpful and powerful. And it doesn't require performance. It requires your full presence. It requires your intention. It requires you being ready to really now let go of the dead parts of you. This is you holding a funeral for those parts of you and attending that funeral and honoring and sending off with love those parts of you that you no longer need. The PDF's there. Hopefully it's just a starting point, even if it just you read the first thing and then all of a sudden you're having your own ideas. That's beautiful. Please make it your own. I do like to share these things sometimes because I know that some of us are quite new to this work, and they haven't been reading the books and doing the things that I've been doing for, I don't know, since I was a teen. And yeah, so I hope that's helpful. And I ask you to just sit quietly and ask, what parts of you are ready to be released with honor, with reverence, with love? This isn't about banishing. This is about releasing those parts of you and allowing them to come back to you, returning to wholeness, but without them being those parts. They now just are pure love. So this is about the releasing of them so that they can be transmuted and you can bring them back to yourself. And that's what I love about what the dragon shared with me. So if you're curious about that, you can go and take a look at the PDF. So I'd just like to end off with, just for us to really start honoring this physical vessel honoring how the physical vessel is our connection to Gaia. Through the work that we do through this physical vessel, that is what our soul is riding in as we walk this journey on this plane, is what allows us to connect with nature, to connect with one another, to connect with the things that bring us joy. This is the very vessel that allows us to experience all those beautifully intense emotions. And this is also a beautiful way of helping to release. It's the somatics again, helping us to release even things that are mentally, emotionally stuck in the body, stuck in the mental body or the emotional body, and that have actually come into the physical body. These are the programs and stuck energies and that kind of thing. So I thank you so much for listening. And I'd love for you to share in the comments if you have any little rituals or ceremonies that you do that work. I always encourage people to share, because every time somebody shares something, that might help somebody else, because my way is not going to work for everybody. So please feel free, as you always do, to comment in the comments section. I'd love to hear from you, as I'm sure everybody else would. And thank you so much for watching. And wherever you are, wishing you a magical day, and wishing you also to start reconnecting to the old magic of the earth, the old magic of the soul, all the things that we've forgotten that we are now remembering as we walk one another home. Sending you much love.